Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Change for the Better Menopause, a Change for Business digital event hosted by the CMI Scotland Board. My name is Mel, and I'm an event delivery coordinator at CMI, and I'll shortly be handing over to Renee, the chair of CMI Scotland Board, to begin this evening's event. If you have any questions during the session, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can during the Q&A. Today's event is being recorded and it will be shared tomorrow for those who have booked to attend. The event recording will also be available on the CMI website and CMI YouTube channel. Now over to Renee to begin tonight's event.
Right, thank you very much, Mel. And as Mel said, that I'm the chair of the CMI Scotland Board and I'm your host for this evening. So a warm welcome to everyone for the event where we're going to be looking at how organisations can support their staff at the menopause period. So we've recently had World Menopause Day on the 18th of October, and it's great to see that there are now conversations happening, even in the UK Parliament, about this issue. And so the conversation tonight, I'm really excited that we've got three experts who are going to join us. So we've got Margaret Wood, Denise Campbell, and we've got Sally Penny, who's MBE. So Margaret and Denise have their own businesses. They've been dealing and working in the area of women's development and support for women in the workplace for many years. I won't embarrass them by the number of years. And Sally is a high-profile barrister and a non-executive director for a variety of companies, giving her experience and expertise in cybersecurity, governance, and employment law. So each presenter will have a session about 15 minutes. We'll have a poll and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So that's enough from me. So let's get on with the session and over to you, Denise.
Thank you, Renee. So we're going to start with a poll to just get a sense of how much you know about the menopause and its impact in the workplace. And we're going to ask the question, how much do you currently know about the menopause and its potential workplace in the its potential impact in the workplace? So if we could have the poll, Mel, that would be great. Thank you. So 5 choices there. So if you are your organisation's expert, if you could select choice 1. If you are well informed about the menopause and its potential impact, you select choice 2. If you're fairly well informed, so somewhere in the middle, I would ask you to go for 3. And 4 is I know a little bit about the menopause and its potential impact. And 5 is I have very limited knowledge about the menopause and its potential impact. So we'll just see what percentage are experts, fairly well informed, limited knowledge, and that will give us a sense of you as an audience this evening. So you can see at the bottom there, it says to join the poll, go to, oh, here we go, 100%. I think that's probably 1 or 2 people at the moment, isn't it? Okay, so we've got some well-informed, some little bit. We'll just let a few more people respond and see where, okay. So it's changing slightly. Okay. So let's just we'll just wait for a few more responses. I was wondering whether we'd end up with a norm curve anyway, so we'll kind of see where we get to. So that's great. More people getting into the poll. Okay. So it's lovely to see that there are some people who are experts in their organisation here tonight, and and then we've got lots of people who say they know a little bit about the menopause and its potential impact, but somebody in every category. So that just helps us, and if we can flex what we're saying this evening to suit that makeup of you as an audience, then we will do so. Let's move on to the meat of the session tonight, and I'm going to hand over to Margaret Wood.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, there's been a lot of research undertaken in and around the menopause for a number of years. I haven't got I'm trying to get the slides. Sorry about this. Oh, my God. That's it. Okay, great. I've been lots of research around menopause transition, and we've taken a snapshot for this presentation, which keeps reinforcing how it affects women's lives, careers, and financial security, and the impact it has on organisations, productivity, profitability, reputations, and ultimately the UK economy. The menopause is a natural occurrence that all women experience, usually between 45 and 55. The average age is 51, and the average duration is between 4 and 8 years, though this too can vary and can last up to 15 years. Though for some women it can happen earlier, mainly due to cancer treatment or hysterectomy. No two women's menopause experience is the same. A quarter of women will have few, if any, symptoms. Another quarter will have a very debilitating time, while the remainder will face some moderately difficult challenges. Women make up slightly over half of our population and just under half of the workforce. The fastest growing demographic in the workforce is women in the menopause transition years. But 1 in 4 of those women consider leaving work, and in fact 1 in 10 do resign as a result of the symptoms that they're experiencing. A Nuffield Health survey found that 3/4 of women felt unsupported at work. And according to the British Menopause Society, nearly half of women who need to take a day off work because of their symptoms wouldn't tell their employer the real reason. And just under half of women feel that their symptoms have had a negative effect on their work. We want to help UK businesses to retain the female talent that they are currently losing. With working women enduring several, often debilitating and invisible symptoms of menopause whilst at work, it's important to address the role that workplaces have in making their menopause experience better and easier to get through. Looking at menopause transition, as I mentioned before, the perimenopause usually starts when a woman is in her 40s, but can start earlier. For many women, it hits them unexpectedly when their career is on a high and they're unprepared for the changes taking place in their bodies. It can also be the time when they're juggling their careers with dependent children and aging parents. Because the menopause is identified with aging, and because some of the early signs point to depression and anxiety, women can find themselves taking antidepressants and sleeping tablets and either don't understand what's happening to them or don't want to acknowledge that they're beginning menopause transition with all its negative connotations. So the menopause is the point when the ovaries stop releasing eggs. And the postmenopause is the stage of life after a woman hasn't had a period for 12 months or longer. And a woman, on average, then, has 1/3 of her life left still to live post-menopause. Because, as we've seen, women are reluctant to disclose their reasons for taking time off sick. Their line managers can find themselves following sick absence management procedures, which in themselves are time-consuming and stressful to all concerned. When present at work, a woman who has had a sleepless night or is feeling depressed or anxious is most probably not doing her job as effectively as usual, and the line manager must then follow their performance management protocols, which are again very disruptive and stressful. A woman who has previously been an active contributor in team meetings and giving presentations suddenly starts not taking part because of fear that being in the spotlight will bring on an embarrassing hot flush, or that she will forget what she wants to say partway through. She will stop contributing and this can be perceived as a lack of interest in her current work or her desire to pursue her career further, and decisions can be taken about her suitability for promotion. She worries that her manager and colleagues think that she will be put out to grass. And all this can come together as a desire to leave the organisation. If a woman leaves, the cost to recruit a replacement can be anything from £12,000 to £100,000, depending on her level of seniority. And no matter how qualified her replacement will be, they won't have the accumulated tacit knowledge of the business that her predecessor had, which can have an impact on productivity and profitability. Added to which, the organisation could get a reputation for not supporting women, and worse still, have tribunal judgments found against them with the inherent damage and costs. We've already seen how women that say their symptoms are negatively affecting their work, and some choose to leave. And if they want to return to work, they find it difficult, partly due to their loss of confidence and self-esteem. Many women, unexpectedly, and for some at very short notice, have had the age when they are expected to be eligible for a state pension increased by at least 6 years. If they're in work, they can feel very demotivated. And if they feel the need to find a job to support themselves financially, it's very difficult to find work to match their skills and talent because of the gendered ageism, and so many older women are forced to accept 0 hours, temporary and low pay contracts, which don't give them the financial security that they need. This PricewaterhouseCoopers report from 2017 found that women face problems in returning to work, as there are significant obstacles in the way, not least because some recruiters relate a gap in employment as a potential deterioration in skills, and there aren't enough opportunities for part-time and flexible working for women in highly skilled jobs. Consequently, there are wasted talents and skills, and although some women freely choose to take on a less demanding role to achieve better work-life balance, many are working below their true potential, which has serious implications for their future earnings and careers. Some of these women will have science, engineering, or maths qualifications and could, with the right opportunities and encouragement, be able to help fill the need for more women in science, technology, engineering, and maths roles. Addressing the career break penalty, especially for professional women, can deliver significant benefits for them and the UK economy. Another example of how things change for women from the age of 40 onwards is the gender pay gap, and we see here that it starts to widen, particularly between 50 and 59 for full-time workers, and this just happens to coincide with the menopause transition years. The reasons given for this are the same as we've seen earlier for women who don't leave work during menopause transition. They don't go for promotion, they're in lower paid jobs, and they want less responsibility at work. This then has a knock-on effect to the pensions that women will receive later. I found it staggering when I first saw these figures that after a career of 44 years, the average woman's pension pot is a third of a man's, mainly due to events during menopause transition. Added to this is the increase in state pension age, when a woman can expect to receive her state pension. Considering that the average age a woman will experience menopause is 51, she will have at least another 15 to 17 years in which she can work, and both she and society can reap the benefits. The menopause isn't just an issue for women. For the majority, their partners and sons and daughters know nothing or very little about how the menopause is affecting them physically, emotionally, and mentally. Surveys show that women feel that they will benefit from their friends and family being better informed, and their partners having a better understanding of what women experience during the menopause transition. A high percentage of women don't realise that depression, anxiety, and irritability are menopause symptoms. despite research finding that these are the top 10 most debilitating symptoms that have a negative impact on their lives and can have a serious impact on their feelings of confidence and self-worth. This means that their loved ones need more knowledge of how debilitating menopause symptoms can be, so that they can help their partners, mothers, sisters, friends, and colleagues to support them through an experience that may be affecting a woman's health and well-being. As we've seen before, women tend to hide their symptoms and struggle on, facing the challenges of the menopause alone, and as a result, they can feel isolated and invisible. Those either living or working with them notice the changes in personality and behaviour, but don't understand the cause. So line managers may find that the partner of a woman going through the menopause also changes their behaviour, and in the workplace becomes less productive because of the additional stress of wondering what's happening to their loved one. Line managers are also unsure how to approach someone who starts to take on days off work without explanation and seems less interested and competent in their day-to-day work. They could find themselves with the additional work and stress involved in following disciplinary procedures, and other team members feeling disadvantaged by having to fill the gaps left by the woman or women who are either absent or not working to the capacity that they come to expect. And all this will clearly affect organisational morale and productivity. It's important to effectively support female employees through the menopause, as a failure can do this can affect a woman's quality of working life and performance at work. Often there's embarrassment on both sides. Having a conversation is a crucial starting point for a manager, but not all women will feel comfortable talking about their symptoms. Managers can only be sympathetic to these needs and make suitable work adjustments if they're aware of a problem, and women will be more inclined to talk openly if they regard managers as supportive and there's a culture of openness about health issues. This amount may now be affected by COVID-19, and we've become accustomed to hearing eye-watering figures over the last 18 months. But this figure published by the Department of Work and Pensions in 2017 to potentially create an extra £150 billion is illustrative of the importance of being supportive of women at work from menopause transition onwards. Not only does it increase a woman's feeling of self-worth, but it increases their financial security through optimising their skills, their employers' profitability, and eventually the UK economy. The menopause is felt by many as loss, and unfortunately women are frequently being defined by their menopause transition, both by themselves and others. And as we've seen, a woman has many years left post-menopause, and most women want to embrace the next stage of their lives with a newfound freedom from monthly hormone cycles. Research on the stages of women's career development suggests that they find a renewed sense of purpose, energy, and increased vitality for work pursuits in mid to later life. The rush of energy, both physical and psychological, that some women feel post-menopause makes it a natural time for them to take stock of their lives. And as the American anthropologist Margaret Mead says, there is no greater power in the world than the zest of a postmenopausal woman. Still young enough to live life to its fullest during this time, women experience a new zest for life and look for new challenges. So it's a stage of life that's free of many encumbrances and full of wonderful possibilities. So I'm now going to hand over to Sally Penny to talk to you about the legal responsibilities that organisations have in supporting women through menopause transition and beyond.
Hello, thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. Thank you, Margaret. That was insightful. Mel has some slides for me. I'm going to run through. Let's stay on this slide. So my name is Sally Penny. I'm a companion at the CMI. I'm a barrister at law. And I defend and I act for the respondents in employment cases. this is just a rough overview here. I'm going to miss some slides because Margaret very helpfully covered some of the areas I was going to, not specifically on the law. So because I'm a lawyer, I'm not touting for work. I'm just here to talk to you about perhaps some ways to avoid ending up needing my services. And I'm going to assume that there are people here from a pure knowledge point of view, women, men, and there are people here who are in management or indeed HR, because poor old HR, you're the people who always end up having to deal with this. So what are some of the claims that might be brought? I know we're in Scotland, but you know, the employment law is the same. Equality Act. So a claimant that the Equality Act might be brought, firstly, perhaps for unfair dismissal. You've dismissed me because of the symptoms I was experiencing during my menopause, or indeed menopause transition, and it's unfair because you should have treated me differently. So that's one claim that could be brought against your business if you're in HR. Secondly, constructive dismissal. So that is that the environment that I was working in was so dreadful that I couldn't possibly work there anymore. So that then the employee, the woman, then resigns and then brings an employment dismissal claim. Disability, and now this is a controversial one, a failure to make reasonable adjustments. So again, using the Equality Act, saying that the menopause is a disability. Now, Margaret was saying that it's natural and the zest, and it got me visualizing, for anybody who has seen Fleabag by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I know people are now thinking about the sexy priest. Take that image out of your mind and think about the last episode, or towards the last episode of the second series, when she's talking to the actress whose name escapes me, and she says, "Oh, I'm post-menopause, and it's brilliant," and so on and so forth. Is menopause a disability? So an employer can argue that it's a disability, and therefore the company, your business, should have been making reasonable adjustments. So that's a really important point. I'm going to come back to a bit later because the disability point is a really interesting one. Is it sex discrimination? By reason of direct sex discrimination, I've not put that on there. It's an extra. That by virtue of my sex, you wouldn't be treating me this way if I was a man, because men do not have the menopause. Harassment. So the way I was treating the workplace was harassing, and that's why I've left the employment. So there's been some cases where actually the judgment has been, no, it's not a disability, and no, you were not unfairly dismissed, but you were harassed. And if it was me bringing a claim, I'd probably add victimization on there as well, add it on for an uplift in damages there. So no one wants to be against me, but you might want me to come and act for your company. Now, as I say, I'm not touting for work. I don't need to. But what is important is that we actually keep the talent in the workplace. The final point I've just added there is about personal director or management added to the claim, so that if the employer, the respondent, it becomes liquidated, is insolvent or whatever, the cause the perpetrator can be added in as personally liable. Yeah, I didn't know that, did you? So you can name you a manager or a director onto the claim. I know, right? Next slide, please. Brilliant. So I added these emojis in because I thought that this is how some HR people might be feeling, or indeed the women who are experiencing menopausal symptoms. And the curious firm is the people working in management who are thinking, how do we manage this position? And so for context, I want to really go to the next slide to talk about the increase in cases being brought in employment tribunals on the base citing menopause as the cause. And I already covered those very quickly, the grounds of them. Next slide, please. So the growing number of employees, women, taking their employers to court, citing menopause. I said that on the basis of unfair dismissal or direct sex discrimination, because sex discrimination, then you don't need length of service, and you're actually just bringing your sex as the ground, so it's easier to prove. Next slide, please. Now, the data was showing, this is just what the increase looks like. In 2019, so, before we had COVID, there were only 6 cases. But then in 2020, so last year, 16, can you see the increase? And then this year, there's been more than this. There's been at least 10 in the first 6 months. And the figure, when I looked again, it was about 26 of claims being brought. So you can see where we're going. Next slide's there. The good news, I've put this as good news for employees, because I know you're all still kind of like, oh, how do we manage the position? Is that women are claiming, so women are exercising their rights, and we've all got mothers, sisters, daughters, so they're exercising their rights to bring cases because they feel empowered. But the cases vary, and there are some, building up some big group lawsuits coming. Actually, to say we as a group have been discriminated against because the number's increasing. And actually, a lot of women in the companies are setting up their own private internal menopause support groups. That's important. I'll come back to it at the end. And if they decide that they're not supported by HR, you could potentially have a problem. So managers, beware. My tip there is encourage these groups. Set them up yourself. Invite Margaret in. There's some other experts in this area. The virtual world, as much as we've hated streaming, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Adobe, all of it, mean that there is no excuse why you can't get in an expert. I don't mean somebody who's experienced menopausal symptoms. That might be useful to have their view. I haven't experienced it yet, but I can tell you about the law. But you might want to know somebody who can actually help you make reasonable adjustments. Encourage the groups because it shows support should you end up in a tribunal situation. Encourage the experts to come in to speak, because then you tick the education box there, because there are a lot of outdated employees, and I'm sure all of you on here are in date and on it. Next slide, please. So just very quickly, women between the age of 50 to 64, Margaret covered some of this already, are in the most economically active group in the UK because of the stated rise in the state pension and the increased life expectancy impact on COVID. 70% of women in employment, almost 4.5 million are in this age bracket. So this issue is not going away. And the reason I'm keen for managers and HR departments to embrace it is because actually, though a lot of these employees and claimants who bring these claims have been in the firms for a very long time, they're skilled talent, it's better to keep them. And it's quite expensive. Lawyers are expensive. Nobody wants them to be in there. But if you can just get ahead of it, it'll be really good. And we know from McKinsey and the various reports and research, the more diverse workplaces are profitable. Next slide, please. I'm just rushing through these because this is kind of the background. 14 million work days a year related to menopause. One in 4 women, and again, Margaret covered this. And I'm just talking here about the loss of employers simply by a lack of knowledge and a lack of treatment, because the symptoms can appear and be mistaken for examples of incompetency and capability, which is an important point in employment law. Has the employee become incapable of doing their work to the degree that they're expected as per their employment contract by virtue of the menopause? Have they? Or is it really that you don't know how to manage their transitioning process? So next slide, please. So what are the courts doing about it? I know I couldn't resist. I'm sorry, I'm a lawyer. I love cases. I've tried to keep this light, actually, and not quote too many statutes at you. So we go to the courts because that's where women are bringing the and there's a massive rise, as I've said, and it's carrying on. I defend a lot of these claims, and I act for claimants. So these are just some of the cases. They're not all. So they're inconsistent. The decisions are inconsistent that's being made, which is why it's being debated and raised in Parliament, and I'll come back to that in a moment. This case here, which is Aggie, she brought a claim because a female worker, it wasn't just because of this, you can read the cases at your own leisure, but was told by her female boss, even worse, it wasn't a male boss because it'd be an outgrad, a female boss who said it's no big deal and that she would face the menopause at the age of 37 and would no longer be able to conceive children anyway. Now, the employment judge in that case ruled the comments did not amount to discrimination, but they did amount to harassment. So she got a payout for that. So do you see what I mean? That there are different areas that claims could be brought against you. And if you are in the HR, the go-to person and the manager, you need to be equipped. So even if the claim is brought, you can say, well, actually, we did try and do this. We did try and cope with that. I mean, you probably can't justify the comment that was made, but that's a different issue. Next slide, please. So that case, no discrimination. Now, 12 hot flushes a day and being woken up 8 times every night by sweat was ruled as disabled by reason of the menopause. Now, I want us all to stop for a moment just to visualize that. Some of us have children on here, and some of you remember sleepless nights, the shock of those sleepless nights, and then having to then function the next day, particularly if you've got other children. So imagine 12 hot flushes a day. Now, there was extensive medical evidence in that, in this case, in the Donaghy case, but actually there was ruled to be disabled, that actually the woman was disabled by reason of the menopause, and thereafter there ought to have been reasonable adjustments. That case was heard in Birmingham, despite the name of the case. So remember what I said about inconsistency, and it's in the ET. So the way that laws work, and indeed cases work, decisions work, that they need to come from the higher courts to be binding on all. When cases are heard at the first instance, which is the employment tribunals, they're not binding on each other. So you can't say, oh, that case in Birmingham said this, so go with it. You've got to actually have a bit of decision from the higher courts and a bit of law. So the law is behind. I'll just cover sort of the last of the 3 interesting cases. Next slide, please. Brilliant. This is the Rooney case, where the tribunal decisions, again, apart from consistent, dismissed the employee's claim to be ruled on account of her symptoms. So what's the solution? Well, there's an all-parliamentary group chaired by Jess Phillips, and I think she's called somebody Fair, I can't remember. I'm on it. I tend now and again to give some legal advice, but they're very keen on changing the law, so amending the Equality Act, so as to include menopause as a disability, which would allow, therefore, claims then by claimants and employees, and allow employers to then say, we're going to make a reasonable adjustments. But so that, watch that space. They're on Twitter and various social media handles to see what happens with that, because they're always very keen on calling for evidence, and I think people can join on a lot of the meetings. Next slide, please. There are many lawyers defending claims. So the issue here is, if you, as I said, if you're a manager and you get a claim like this, the case law is inconsistent, and actually we need an improvement from the law, and the law is behind the reality of what's happening. So there's an increase in cases, but the law has not caught up and does not make any arrangement because of the inconsistencies that there are. And also there's a warning and a danger that actually the decisions seem to vary depending on where you live, which you can't really have in law. We need consistency of application, because that would not only help employers, but also help employees. Next slide, please. So again, this is a lack of consistency and clarity, which is what I'm talking about here, that it would actually help both parties and be proactive. And so we need decisions from the appeal courts as to the to clarify the position of what is a disability, what is direct sex discrimination, what is harassment, what isn't, and so that actually the court can apply the law properly when people bring the claims. Next, please. And so we urgently need guidance, and we need some real guidance in the law. But also we need societal change to embrace the changes women are experiencing. And I've just put, encourage more people to be magistrates and lay people, because I'm sure that we could have a diverse set of people making decisions in the court system. In general, it will affect the outcomes on whichever side one is on. Next slide, please. So, tips for employers, do's and avoid to avoid the courts. Number 1, educate yourself. Get somebody in. I noticed from the poll, there was quite an interesting answers there that Denise found too. I was watching to see people's knowledge levels. Educate yourself and actually ask some of the questions here. If you're the manager or the HR, do you actually have knowledge that the woman is going through the menopause? Is there somebody who's just been off sick for goodness knows how long? Margaret alluded to the fact that actually a lot of the employees may be having antidepressants and so on and so forth. So actually, you, the employer, may not know, and you need to work out how you approach it, delicately might I say, and what assistance you can have. Because if a claim is brought under disability and the Equality Act, then you want to be in a position to say, well, we made reasonable adjustments, and we made, contact in this way, sensitively, so on and so forth. But you do need knowledge. And if you suspect it, can you go to some staff? Or, how are you going to address it? These are things you need to be talking about. Have you got any policies? What do the policies say? Have they been updated? Or, are they policies that nobody's actually looked at for quite some time? Now, reasonable adjustments, I said you can make those once you've had knowledge. What might the reasonable adjustments be? Flexible working. They can attend team meetings, perhaps, but take the cameras off if, the sweats are so bad. Now, I've picked some of the obvious and unpleasant things, but some of the other aspects actually, I hope I'm doing all right on time. Brain fog, that's one of the symptoms. And brain fog is mistaken, I know this from clients, is then mistaken as they're a bit off. They don't quite know what they're doing. It was the same employee, but actually they're experiencing the symptoms. So the reasonable adjustments need to be simple things. So reasonable adjustments, if you look at the statute, there's a variety of things. If you expect somebody who's woken up 12 times in the night to go to a meeting in London, that's going to be pretty impossible for them if they've got some of the other symptoms as well. So what reasonable adjustments can you make? Telephone conferencing. Can you have a one-to-one? Can you postpone the meeting? Is it crucial that they're there? In a post-COVID world, I would think that our ability to manage some of these situations are a bit better. Show support. That's one of the ways to avoid the courts. So this is a tricky one because I was mentioning privacy before. Often the employer doesn't want to go and ask the person that they're quite good friends with where the employer is the person who's been off for a while or isn't quite right or whatever else. But they want to show support and they don't know how to do it, a bit taboo, without invading privacy. But you might want to start sharing perhaps some information about the menopause. Maybe you've been on this course and you contact Margaret to come in, or maybe give information websites, Menopause Society, gently sharing it in that way. And perhaps the employee or employees might then get in contact to say, actually, I'm going through this. I don't know what it is. Although some of the initial symptoms for me sounded, but the irritability, crikey, I thought my husband would probably say, I'm going through the menopause or premenopausal at that stage, but we mustn't sort of downplay it. So can they, so that the ET can show non-discriminatory practices, and that's why I've said they're about support. Next slide, please. So good managers avoid being part of horror stories, getting things wrong, being outdated and ill-informed and ending up in tribunals. You can see all the reasons there. And the reason is that lack of education is dangerous to women's health and it's unfair to their careers. If we can retain the talent, then even better. Next slide, please. There are some questions. If you've got questions, we don't manage to get through them today, you can contact me various those means. And then next slide. Some resources about the menopause. If you're thinking, crikey, I don't think I know enough, there's some there. Or contact Margaret, she's a real expert. Next slide. And good luck. I just thought, gosh, after racing through, that kind of summarizes it, doesn't it? But can I just say, look, women go through childbirth, then they go through back in the workplace, they manage and juggle the flexible working, the paid income, they pay no national insurance whilst they're off, then they get a massive gap in pension once they're approaching retirement age, and now we're getting worse to probably 100 at this rate, then they get smacked in the face, called the menopause, and then they face dismissal from the employer. Good employers retain talent, and I'm sure you will all want to do that because lawyers are expensive. Thank you very much.
Hi, so Mel, waiting for a slide to come up. That's great. So I'm just going to follow on from Sally and the retained talent because, I believe that at every stage in our life, we should be able to at least try and make it the best it can be for that stage. And I think we have a responsibility to help make a difference and actually harness, expand, retain talent of this group, this pool of talented menopausal women in your organization, not just to avoid the core, but as has been said a few times tonight, to actually retain that talent, because what a loss it would be without them. And so I just want to touch on some things that we might need to do either as colleagues or line managers, but particularly as line managers, in order to support a more positive experience for women. And so that's what the self-awareness check-ins and thinking about your own development would be. And I'm going to apologise because my neighbour has just started jumping up and down upstairs, so hopefully you can't hear it. There are 4 questions around there. One is about what do I need to be able to do? So that's about your skill set. One is about what do I need to know? That's about your knowledge set. And then values. Is it actually important to me to support this pool of women going through menopause transition? And attitudes. Do I actually care whether they're supported or not? So I think all of those are important. And if I start at the top with being aware of the effect, it's what we've been talking about today. But if you only did one thing and you were aware of the effect of the menopause on working women and you started to talk to other colleagues in your workplace so that their awareness was raised, then, without any specific action from your organization, organically, it would become something that people were aware of and felt more comfortable to talk about. So that's something you need to know. What is the effect of menopause on working women? And then what next do I need to know? Sally raised the point that we all know aunties and uncles, we know aunties, grandmas, mothers, cousins, friends, colleagues. So at any point in our life, we will know someone that is in menopause transition, whether actually we've actively talked about that or not. But we know that every individual has a different experience going through the menopause. So mine will be different to Sally's, will be different to Margaret's, will be different to Renee's. And if we base our judgments and our support on the experiences that we know about, whether it's our own or it's our mother's, auntie's, another colleague, then we are basing that on assumptions, and it is very, very unlikely to be true. So we need to be aware of the effect, and we need to understand that it is an individual experience. And for 25%, that will be debilitating. For another 50%, it will be challenging. But for 75% of us, it's a challenging experience. And so when we've got that knowledge, we then need to develop the skills to give the support. So there's something here about developing the skills to have meaningful and sensitive and appropriate conversations. And that might be about health and well-being. It might be post any related sickness absence, but it could be about how they are doing their job. And Sally mentioned performance. It might be about how they're doing their job, but it also might be about where they think they're going in terms of their career at this stage in their life. So that it's not all about the negative side of menopause. It can be about some of the positives, not for every woman, but for some women. And it's worth thinking about those conversations. And then if we start to develop our skills to have these conversations, and we start to have regular one-to-ones, maybe in a kind of informal, flexible, pattern, what we're starting to think about is my approach to managing people one that creates an inclusive culture? Am I building relationships with the people in my team based on not just on trust, but maybe on psychological safety, so that actually they feel okay to say, I am off because it's a menopause related symptom, or I'm struggling with my performance because of something that's happening to me psychologically or physiologically or physically, because of the menopause. Are we building relationships based on mutual respect so that people feel comfortable talking to us about this? It's a question for us as line managers. And that makes us ask, is it important for me to actually develop those skills and have these conversations? And actually, do I care enough to want to do them in a way that is supportive? And then when we've done all that, we get back to being able to make and implement decisions about changes or adjustments, which Sally has also touched on. And Some of that is knowing what's my level of discretion and flexibility in my organisation. Do we have a policy that says I can make decisions on adjustments? Maybe I can, maybe I can't. So we need to understand that. But then we also need to have the confidence to make and follow through on those for that individual that I'm managing and having this conversation and this support with. So we need to apply the policy. Policies are only bits of paper if managers don't understand them and do something with them. And that's what we want to happen. And so if we layer on top of this what we can do as organisations, the first thing is to proactively let people know in your organisation that you have a positive attitude towards supporting women going through menopause transition. That there's lots of ways we can do that, not just publishing a policy. Maybe it is supporting through HR and menopause group. There's lots of things we can do, but letting people know we do have a positive attitude is really important. And then actually enabling managers to develop the skills and knowledge that they need through training, awareness sessions, through intranet discussions, all sorts of things. But those kind of things are really important if we want to create routes for them to feel empowered to make decisions on behalf of the individuals in their teams. And then the final thing I want to touch on as organisations is, if we want to retain talent, wouldn't it be fantastic to provide opportunities for women to use this time to really gain a new perspective on where they are at and what that means in terms of their life and their careers? We're going through change. So let's think, in my experience working with women at this stage in their life around their careers is they want to change lots of things because they're going through change and it's kind of predominant in their brain. So let's allow them to take stock. Let's allow them to think about where they want to build their talent or where they want to put their energies. Wouldn't it be great if we could do that for individuals at this stage? And that takes me on to our Change for the Better framework. So we could move to the next slide, Mel. Thank you. So Margaret and I have both worked with women and in women's development over the years. And through doing that, we appreciate that in the left-hand column, here are some of the things that enable women to flourish and would enable them to flourish at this point in their career as they're going through menopause transition. There's lots of things in there. When we're going through menopause, sometimes our self-image is kind of shattered or it changes. So just taking time out to think about that. Our resilience may or may not be different. And again, that's our individual experience. But understanding that when we're going through the menopause is really helpful. And then how do we take responsibility for the relationships around us? It's okay to say organisations and line managers should support us, but let's take some responsibility ourselves and make sure our relationships are good enough so that we can influence and access that support when we want to. And in the middle column, this workshop really is about unlocking the awareness and understanding that line managers would need. And it's an enabler to developing the skills that they might need for relationships, support, decision-making, etc. And then in the right-hand column, at an organisation level, in some organisations, and it may be in yours, there are opportunities for women who return from maternity leave to have a buddy or a mentor as a women returner. There are other mentors around, well-being mentoring in a number of organisations. And we think it would be beneficial for a pool of people in an organisation to be dedicated menopause mentors so that women could access support from someone within that understands their organisational context, but actually might not be their line manager, that they want to talk to and think through things in a very personal and individual way. And we're currently discussing collaborating with the CMI around this Developing Menopause Mentors programme. So the framework is about developing individuals to help them support themselves at this time of transition, developing line managers to enable them to provide the right support at the right time if it's required, and finally developing people who would wish to provide support in a personal and individual way for other women going through the menopause in their organisation. So a rounded picture, I guess, and that's how I wanted to finish. Again, similar to Sally, we've got some contact information there that you'll get on the slides. But I want to hand back to Renee now, and we'll open things up to a Q&A.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that. Wow, I'm still being sort of proof about all that information and knowledge. I mean, great. Thank you so much for those 3 presentations. So questions are coming in thick and fast, and we had some earlier, so pre-submitted ones. So, you know, hopefully we can get through a few of those now. So the first one, actually, I'd like to refer to Sally, please. We had a pre-submitted question and one from the audience. So Claire says, my organisation appears resistant. Sorry, I'm having to read this. Forgive me. My organisation appears resistant to having a specific menopause policy and instead directs managers to the flexible working policy. How can we ensure that organisations take this seriously enough? And from Fraser in the audience, he said, should we have a management policy? Sally, thoughts? You're on mute, I think, Sally.
You would think 18 months I'd learned the mute button, honestly. Forgive me. Thank you for your question, Claire. Thank you for your question, Fraser. It's a really, really good question to ask for several reasons. The short answer is yes, try and have a specific policy, because in the long run, it will help you. And also give employees somewhere to go and have a look to see where it is. The reason why perhaps there might be a resistance, and this happens actually in organizations often, and the reference to flexible working policy is that there, at least then, you know, they think, well, we've done something already, yet again another policy that we can avoid doing. There's a policy already existing. How can we make that work, and can applications be made there to work flexibly? And then, of course, the employer's got the right to refuse the application. This is right to apply, but there's no right for it to be granted. So that's why they direct you there, because they think we've already got a policy on the flexible working, but you know, don't want to avoid it. That's the short answer. The resistance is they want to avoid having too many policies, especially outdated policies. Have a look to see what is the policy. Go to HR. I do feel sorry for HR and managers, because I spend a lot of time in my day job, me having to cross-examine them or call them, yeah, I'm afraid. So I'm trying to save them a bit of time here to, you know, avoid the courtroom, because you see, because women are empowered, they just bring claims now. You know, it's great on the one hand, yeah, they're empowered to say, I know my rights and I know what they ought to be. But on the other hand, it doesn't really help them in pensions and finding re-employment, for example, or re-engagement. And so that's why I'm keen for you to regain your staff, particularly good staff. Should you have a specific policy? I would say good managers would say yes. Even if you're not quite sure, even if you're thinking, oh, it's another policy to draft, you know, it shows that you're paying attention to it. I know that you're bombarded with policies. A lot of them are driven or written by the likes of me. But it's good practice to at least show you've been thinking about it. Then you're not outdated or behind, and then hit like with a wet fish when the claim comes in, going, well, I didn't see this. We had a, you know, flexible policy. So at least when you're drafting that policy, as I say, you know, try and get some trainers on and try and deal with them in those ways. Fraser, thanks very much. I take it you're a man, or all genders are welcome on here. Good to see the men thinking about this as well as the women managers. So thank you for your question, and thank you for your question, Claire.
Okay, thanks very much, Sally. Very helpful. Next question is for Margaret, please. A question from Sonia saying how to support people and make appropriate adjustments without broadcasting things, but still maintain an individual's right to privacy.
Yeah, good
Have
question.
you got any help there?
Yes, Sonia, I think that's just so appropriate. I don't. Our view is that we tell people what the experience a woman might have of the menopause and the range of things it could be, to raise their awareness of that. But we don't feel that individuals should need to go and be having to discuss their own personal menopause symptoms, because it is very personal. I wouldn't want to talk to people about the experiences that I had. So it's crucial that we don't allow people to feel, as I said on the other slide, embarrassed. They shouldn't have to feel like that, nor should line managers feel on the other side, because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing as well. So I think this is why Denise and I thought that, you know, we pulled together the Change for the Better framework, because we feel that that addresses both the needs of women, the needs of line managers, and then the menopause mentors are there to be able, for women to be able to go to and talk about the things that they perhaps wouldn't feel as comfortable about talking to the line manager. So I think it's crucially important that women don't feel that they've got to be saying what their symptoms are to their line managers, and the line managers shouldn't have to be sitting there thinking, oh really, I don't actually want to hear this from this person. You know, it can be very embarrassing. So I think what we're thinking about is finding a way of getting around that, which acknowledges the situation that people are in without putting them in that difficult situation. And I think another thing as well, Sonia, that some people might feel is that the people that they work with, their colleagues, they shouldn't have to be, the colleague needn't to find out about the intimate details. That it should be enough, as Denise was saying, that these are the things that potentially can happen to women during the menopause, and they should just be able to say to their managers, I'm having the issues that I'm having at the moment are to do with my experiences physiologically, physically or mentally, and they shouldn't have to go into those kind of details. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Margaret. That was great. Thank you. I think we've just time maybe for one more question, but I think I might want two views on this, please. So Denise first, a question from Willie. What would be the single biggest thing that employers and managers could do to make a positive change?
I think if they were going to do one thing, and that wasn't policy related or procedure related, it would be to make it really clear within the organisation that we have a positive attitude to supporting women in menopause transition, and to raise awareness amongst line managers and colleagues of what that might mean and what that might entail. And sorry, I gave you two things there. But yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Denise. Sally, do you just want to come in on that one as well?
Oh, yes. I mean, Denise talked about developing the mentors program, CMI mentors program, which I think is a great idea because it could be akin to the mental health first aiders. I don't know if there's any on here in our audience, but what a good idea, because you might not want to, as we saw briefly in some of the cases I cited. I know I didn't tell you in the ins and outs of the facts, but anybody who has trouble sleeping can read the report. You know, you might not, the individual may not want to go to the line manager or the supervisor because they actually may be participant in not making the environment conducive. Yeah. Whereas if you do have these mentors or I don't want to call them, menopause first aiders. I don't know what would be appropriate. You have to forgive me, but it would mean that you've got somebody in there, the same as with mental health first aiders. If somebody comes to them and they can't deal with it, they direct them to another aider who's maybe more appropriate. So there's a vision for that. So I think that would be a very good thing. To answer Wiley's question about, the single biggest thing that employer managers would make a positive change, I think it's making it clear that menopause exists. Like, I think, God, if somebody came to him, he's a manager, he would have a clue where to start. He's just about dealing with, trans and LGBTQ, right? And still trying to work out what the letters mean. Actually showing that you are on it with the menopause, it exists, you're there to support. I think that message needs to be clear. And then getting on the education piece and the training piece that, this is something. And then policy, obviously, I would say that, but that's because I don't want to see you all in court. But I think the single positive impact is to just show that actually you've been on a CMI, you know a bit about menopause now. Now, what are we going to do about it? And having the open conversation about it, so it's not a taboo. And so, younger women aren't going, why is she going? Where's she going? She can't be picking up children. She's beyond the age. Actually, there's an open environment and a safe place to have the conversation. So that's what I would say. I think employers and managers can make a positive change by saying, about it. And it's the educational piece for me, really, because then if things go wrong, you can show in the court, so you did offer some support, you did try and make reasonable adjustments, at least you have some knowledge, which is where some of these cases have gone wrong. Does that answer the question, Renee?
I think so, yes, admirably. Thank you very much. There's lots of food for thought and ideas and actions that we can take away. So I noticed time actually, sadly, is running out for us, or in fact has actually ended. So I'd just like to thank, I'd certainly like to thank our presenters here, Denise, Margaret and Sally, and certainly to CMI for their support behind the scenes here, putting this event together. So I hope that you'll now be inspired, you'll have the knowledge, and possibly think further about being a champion for a change for the better for menopause in your organisation. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and goodbye, or au revoir.
Perfect. So unfortunately, that is it for today's session. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and thank you again, Sally, Margaret, Denise and Renee, for your insights and expertise. Don't forget, if you're a member of CMI, you can log into Management Direct using the link in the live chat, where you can find a wide range of exclusive and practical development resources and much more. If you're not yet a member or subscriber, you can join our community via the link in the live chat as well to gain full access to our Management Direct portal. You can also sign up to the free CMI newsletter for the latest trends and tips for managers and leaders. Please also do take a few moments to fill in the evaluation form. The link is also in the live chat. So thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening.